Hi, my name is JT. I'm a recovering heroin addict. Been clean a little over a year and a half now. I started recreationally using drugs when I was about 15 years old. I guess I was a freshman, sophomore in high school. And that really wasn't anything that affected my life too much. My pockets were always empty. I never had any money, but you know, I gained a couple friends, and I guess that's what I was looking for. I didn't really feel like I fit in, so I needed somebody. Everybody in high school needs friends. Everybody always needs friends. So those are the friends I found, and I kind of liked what they did when they were hanging out. So pot turned to other things, acid and drinking over the years. You know, I really didn't have a persistent, constant drug problem until after college, or after high school was done, and a few years after that, actually. I became a heavy drinker first, and that became my first problem. Then eventually I'd get ideas in my head. Once I started getting a little drunk, I'd feel like feeling a little better, so I would find something else. Turned to ecstasy. Ecstasy was a big problem when I finally got wrapped up in it. I loved it so much. It was my whole life. I didn't want anything or anybody but ecstasy, and so I wound up selling it, and I couldn't even sell it fast enough to do what I had left over free. So it was still costing me, even though I was selling it, and I was basically risking my freedom and my health, which I didn't really care about, but all that for, you know, trying to get some free ecstasy, and I still didn't get it free. But I didn't care, and then it went to, you know, it all revolved around the people that I knew and the people I met. And it seemed like the deeper I got into it, the worse people I would meet. And I guess that's how it works. But, you know, it went straight from ecstasy to crack. And so, of course, I wound up with a crack problem. And that's when the rehab started. That was my first taste of rehab. Actually, I had done heroin one time, and that was to help come down off crack. That was my excuse or reasoning anyway that day that I tried it. I had the guy there that was with me inject it for me, since I didn't know what I was doing, and I told him and I told myself I was going to do it that one time and never do it again. Shortly thereafter, of course, I was back the very next day doing it again, but it immediately led to a habit, and very shortly thereafter I was in my first rehab treatment center. That was I think a 2 or 3 week deal, and I felt cured when I came out. Felt great, you know. I'm sober, and basically I was kidding myself, and I was really kidding other people too. It was easier to kid other people than it was myself, because I always knew what was inside and what I was really thinking. You know, I think deep down, even after my first rehab, which is the most impactful anyway, the way I see it, just because I'd never seen it or been around it before. It really had it was more striking the first time I was in there. So I really did feel that it had made a big difference. But I also learned to read myself deeper inside, because you know, I was even fooled by my own ideas and thoughts after I got out of rehab that I was cured and I was fixed, and I wasn't going to go back to drugs. Heroin was the least of my problems at that time. Like I said before, it was crack and ecstasy and pills. I was really into the pills. But I pulled that stuff from my life for I think it was 9 or 10, 11 months, somewhere around there, and the very same guy that injected me for the first time brought it up again, and I wound up just doing it. And you know, I don't even remember the specific time. That's not really too important in terms of the story, but I wound up back doing it, and And it wasn't, again, for some reason, for me, it wasn't like it is for most people. When they do it one time and they just can't put it down. I would do it, and it would just rest there in the back of my mind, and I'd think about it, but I wouldn't go back every day and go back and do it all the time. It took a while for me to get to that point, and I know that's pretty different than it is with a lot of people, but I guess maybe I figured that I had enough other drugs that I didn't need that drug. But I went actually a period of a few years without doing heroin, and I was drug free for the most part too. I did drink, however. I drank pretty heavily for all of those years, and a friend of mine, or used to be a friend, or whatever you want to call him, got out of prison. He had a grand idea to get high on some heroin, so I agreed, and we did. And this time I came down with a bad habit, and it took me down real quick. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened in that episode. I don't remember really, but I wound up in another rehab center in Boonville, Missouri, and that was a 30-day treatment center. I liked it. I thought it was great. Made the mistake of finding my next girlfriend there, so she was another addict that I met in treatment, and that was just a mess. That relationship was a mess for however long it lasted, a year and a half after that. She was using, I wasn't using. She was lying about it, and I really got to see up close, firsthand, how deceitful and obnoxious and conniving an addict can be. And she would do it right in front of my face, not the heroin. She thought that I didn't know, and I would tell her that I knew, but she still didn't believe me that, she could lie her way out of anything. But the whole point of me talking about her is just that I got to see, right there in front of my face how an addict can be, how they can lie right to your face, and it doesn't matter who you are. But and that was, I didn't take that real easy. I can sit here and talk about it now like it's no big deal, but it was pretty rough on me. I really liked her, and I lost her to that drug, and she didn't die, as far as I know. She's still alive. But I'll fast forward to the last couple years. I had been, again, clean off drugs, hadn't done them in quite some time. I've always suffered from depression my whole life. I've got bipolar and major depression, and I've always taken medication for it. Nothing's ever really seemed to work, or if it does work, it doesn't work well enough, and I believe that's the root of the whole addiction problem with me. I need something to make me feel better, and I don't want something that I'm going to have to take and wait for 3 weeks or a month or 6 weeks before I can tell if I can sit and think about maybe there's a difference. I want something that I can take right now and feel better, and that's why I've had all the problems that I've had. But I was able to hold my life together pretty well up until the last couple years. And I wound up buying my first house, and I lived there with my fiance, who was just, she was clean as a whistle, just a really, really good girl, great person, just an excellent human being that anybody would love. And of course, she had problems of her own, but nothing in the way of addiction or anything like that. So, again, I don't remember how it happened, but it's me. I'm an addict, and if I don't keep myself in check, if I don't do the things that I currently do, the whole point of my story is that I shot myself in the head. The last couple of years, things kind of fell apart. I got back into heroin. Long story short, it was the second time I had done it, second time I had relapsed since I'd been with Sarah, my fiance. She had promised me, made me a promise the next time I relapsed she wasn't going to be around anymore, she was going to leave me. So when I relapsed, I knew that was happening anyway. She didn't have to tell me, and she never did tell me. She just, you know, we just made plans to separate and her move out when I finally got caught, if you want to call it caught. I was sick and I was ready to tell her, and you know, I was out of resources. I had used all my credit cards up with cash advances to the tune of about $40,000 in the last month or two, and I had no more resources, nothing else I could do to get high. And I'm not the kind of guy that goes and steals from people, so I just didn't do it. And so we broke up. I moved out of the house, went back to my parents' house. I was 35 years old at the time, and I was, like I said, with my depression, I was just so bummed out, depressed in the first place, also without any drugs. My system hasn't been used to not having drugs. My drinking was minimal, even though I was drinking some, but I just got more and more depressed. I sat around there at my parents' house. I didn't really know where to go or what to do. And I was just down on myself because I'm a full-grown man having to live in a room in my parents' house just like I did growing up as a child. It makes me feel like a child. So I got an idea, and I thought of this many times before in the past. You know, I had thought about suicide a lot of times. And I'd had a couple attempts in the past, but you know, I was always fine and out of the hospital in a couple days. But this time I was going to do it, and I was going to make sure that I did it right. So I went to Cabela's, and this was around Christmas time of 2010, and I bought myself a .380 pistol. And it was about $200, which is all the money I had. I wanted a Smith & Wesson 500, but they're $1,000, and didn't have the money for it, so I got what I could. And I let that thing sit around my house, sit around my parents' house loaded. Sometimes it was in the drawer, sometimes it was under my pillow, sometimes it was on the chair, just wherever. I'd always have it out messing around with it at night when I was in there by myself. And I knew that I was going to use it. That's the whole reason I bought it. And like I said, it was loaded and ready to go. But I didn't know when I was going to be able to use it, when I was going to be able to get the courage up to actually do it. But I knew it was coming. I knew as bad as I get to feeling that I would be able to do it eventually. And one night I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and I had drank just it was a half pint of vodka. Probably hadn't even all kicked in yet. I was just finished with it, and you know, wasn't really that drunk. But I sat and I thought, I remember this whole thing happened in about 5 seconds. I thought, from start to finish, I thought, you know, you're feeling this way now, you're only going to feel worse the longer you wait before you drink or take more drugs. And when you wake up tomorrow, you're going to feel even worse than that, and that's going to be how you feel every day until you die. So do it. And I turned around, the pistol was right behind me, I turned around, I grabbed it, put it to my head, and pulled the trigger. And it went off, and went through my head, but not out the other side. It went in here, came out here, and did a lot of nerve damage. I'm deaf in my right ear. Shattered my jawbone, my jaw joint, shattered my other jawbone on the other side. Did some other things too, but you know, I got out easy. I was in the hospital for a couple months, and they did a good job saving me and bringing me back to health, and I've still got surgeries going on. Like I said, it's been about 1.5 years since that happened. That was the last night that I drank or used any kind of drugs. But now, you know, when these surgeries are finished, I only have, I believe, 2 left. If everything goes as planned, then I'll be able to hopefully resume my life. I've got a business degree, and hopefully I'll be able to use that somehow to find some kind of a decent job, move out of my parents' house and live like a man on my own instead of like a child with them. And in the meantime, I go to lots of 12-step meetings, and I have a lot of friends in that program that I talk to on a regular basis. And pretty much, I think what needed to happen with me is, number one, that I hit my true bottom, because I'd been homeless before. I skipped that for to try to keep the story a little shorter, but I've been homeless. I've overdosed and gone to the hospital for that, and there have been several times when my life was on the line, but I was saved for this reason or that. And the second thing is that the idea, the fact that I'm an addict is always in the forefront of my mind. I've been programmed now, brainwashed, if you will, but I needed it. I had a dirty brain. I needed to be brainwashed or whatever, so that I'm constantly on guard, and I constantly think about, maybe not consciously, but at least subconsciously, I have it in the back of my mind, what I am and how I act when when these things are presented to me, and I know how tough it is. I know how tough heroin is. It's a beast, and it's like the hardest thing to quit doing, even if the sickness wasn't there. But the most important thing is that my desire to not go back to where I was is stronger than my desire to use. And that's what keeps me sober. I had to hit my rock bottom, and I hit it for sure. There's no way, as far as I know, I could go any lower than that. And that's pretty much my story. I'm sober today.